So, welcome everyone. Welcome to another session of Thoughts on Education. Today we have Mr. Rajiv Bhargav with us, who is associated with Indian School of Business for the past 10 years. And he is currently the Associate Director of Indian School of Business. Prior to that, he was the Colonel with the Indian Army for good 25 years. Welcome, Mr. Rajiv Bhargav. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
Yes. So we would like to ask some of the questions which our audience, who are the students, would like to know. So, like, you've held key positions at educational institutes throughout your career, for the past 10, 11 years. So, how do you keep yourself updated in a fast-changing environment, specifically in the education and the edtech ecosystem where things are changing so rapidly? And this pandemic has brought in so many technology and changes. It's part of the education system. It's so much imbibed in it. So how do you cope up? How do you keep yourself updated, sir?
So it is not about coping up. It is about being ahead of the curve, right?
Right.
So what happens is one should be aware of how things are changing. Of course, there has been this COVID 2019, which took everyone by surprise and has changed the entire system. But luckily for us also, we were, even before COVID, in fact, in the education industry and specifically us too, we were going digital. The pace was slow, but now the pace has increased. So by being strategic in your thinking, you are always ahead of the curve. And that's what keeps you, ahead of the curve. Simple.
Right. So being ahead of the curve and going along with the process and with the workflow, that surely helps. Right.
Yes, it definitely helps.
Right. Moving on to the next question. Being the director, what's your philosophy of leadership? How do you describe your leadership style? How do you lead the students and the faculty members and the college as a whole? What's your leadership style, sir?
Yeah, so I am the Associate Director at the Munjal Institute for Global Manufacturing at ISB.
Okay.
And we conduct a number of niche programs, and of which there is a one-year program by the name of Advanced Management Program for Manufacturing and Operations.
Okay.
Right. So we are dealing with a large number of people who are maybe in a service bracket of 2 to maybe even 20 years, right? So see, what happens is, in today's students, you can't have that system of learning by rote, as we say. And if you remember, earlier on in the previous times, the student had to mug up everything.
Correct.
Right? Had to learn everything word by word.
By heart every day.
There are people who have, everything has to be learned by heart. But today, that system is out. In fact, the Indian education policy talks about bringing in the inherent creativity of the students to come out. And that can only be achieved by giving freedom to the students and not to hold them to ransom to the exams. You see,
right.
Now, if you get a good score in your exams, you are a successful student. If you don't get a score, you are a poor student. And so what happens, what happens is teachers prefer to get answers which they have dictated sometime back in the classroom.
Correct.
Right? So the student who can learn by heart scores very well, but a real student who has seen the practicalities does not succeed. So the idea is to give an intellectual freedom. That is most essential to the students, to the staff, and to see what happens. It goes top down. If the faculty is held accountable to the students scoring very high marks, invariably faculty will also pass it down to the students. So what is required is for the faculty also to be given the freedom to assess students as per what is required. Now see, assessment in biology will be different from an assessment in mathematics
Right.
or an assessment in IT. You can't have one rule for all.
Correct.
So that is why there is some amount of intellectual freedom, some amount of flexibility that has to be given to the faculty, and the faculty has to pass it on to the students. And I'm very happy to say that as far as Indian education system is concerned, uh, the best part is that Forbes India had conducted a survey just in September 2020, and this was in collaboration with EDHEC.
Mm-hmm.
What positive news which has come out is that 83% of the Indians today, they feel that the Indian higher education system is good, and more important, 89% feel that it will be better in the future. That is very important, right? And also, surprisingly, we are again, I will use the same phrase again, ahead of the curve. We are ahead of the curve as far as learning through digital means is concerned. And 90% of the Indians today are ready to learn digitally. I mean, by 90%, I mean not Indians, yes. I mean those who responded to this, right? 90% of them said that they are very, very ready to learn digitally, and they think that digital is the way forward. So considering all this, if you ask the philosophy, it is all about giving intellectual freedom to the faculty as well as the students, and trying to bring in some amount of vocational training into the system. As you may be aware, that the government had a very lofty and a very an objective was that, you know, to bring in apprentice embedded degree and diploma courses in 150 higher education institutions in India by March 2021. Of course, there may be some impact due to COVID, but I'm sure this is the right way forward. So, you know, not just be learning by heart, but learning vocationally.
Right. So basically, you're saying that empowering faculty members and empowering, and then they will in turn empower the students, giving them the
Yes.
flexibility to think, that room to that space to think outside of the box. So that kind of environment you're creating in the university, that is helping.
Yes.
Right. But I would like to differ at one point that Indian universities are not ranked very well globally. I'm not sure what the reason is. Like you mentioned, the Forbes listing. So ISB is one of them for sure. Few IIMs are listed in the ranking, but they're not at the top. So that's one thing. And another thing is that I think from the very beginning, from primary to higher secondary, we should implement this practical experience and experimental based learning rather than inclining more towards textbook and grade based evaluation. So some of the institutions in India are definitely doing that, but at a later stage towards the college and university stage. But I think this should get implemented at a much earlier stage also. It will show wonders.
You see, if you see the Indian education policy, it has ticked all the right boxes. What is required is to execute the thought which is in the policy. Well, if you take the undergraduate status today, right? Now there is so much of distribution in the sense a person who does just 1 year and due to some reason moves out, you are giving him a diploma, right? If that person after 1 year feels again that okay, I need to come back, that person is again able to do the second year, then third year. So there is modularity which has come in. Now this modularity is very good, let me tell you. And that will, and a person who wants to stay for 4 years, say after 3 years, they can do a little, I mean, you get a degree along with the research capability. So
right.
Research is also very important in the education. See, there are two things. One is education dissemination, right? We are very good at dissemination in the sense, whatever the teacher, whatever you get, you teach. But what about education, knowledge creation, right? How do you create knowledge? That comes through research. Right. And that is very important. And especially with the policy, education policy saying that local content has to be enhanced in all our curriculums which are there, and rightfully so. So if that has to happen, we can't be just based on the Harvards and the European and the British institutions and we follow them just like that. We can't have that.
Yes.
We have to have our own system.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's the point that I'm saying. So you are right. We are not currently in the top 100 universities, or maybe we are very poorly represented in the top 1,000 universities of the world. But I'm confident that by 2030, we should be on the right way, because if we implement the education policy, I am confident that we'll have large number of, not large, more number of universities represented in the top.
I'm sure it's getting better day by day. Yes.
Yes, I'm confident about that.
Right. So moving on to the next question, I would like to ask, what are the core values of the university, and what do you see your university's greatest strength, if you would like to highlight a couple of them?
Okay. See, you are talking about in general, right?
Yes.
You're talking about Indian, what should be the core aspects?
I'm talking about your university.
My university.
Yes,
okay.
Specifically.
So our endeavor is to bring the best education to the student. Now, it may cost more, right? So what happens when you bring in the best? It costs more. So it should be such that the student is able to take a loan, educational loan, to be educated well, and then be so placed that the student is able to pay back that loan and continue. So then it is a rising tide. Everyone gains, right? Because if we are able to give quality education, yeah, sorry, you are saying something. Go ahead.
It's a sustainable model with a positive feedback loop kind of a thing. Sustainable model.
There can be a negative. I am saying there can be a negative loop also. Right? A negative loop is you reduce the cost, the tuition fees very much. So once you reduce the tuition fees, the quality goes down. Right? The student who comes is not able to get a position in a good company, and then that student goes by, and their children again are, and so it's a negative loop which comes in. I am talking of a positive loop.
Correct.
And that is the way, that is the basic essence that we follow, that we give the best education possible to the students. We enable them to obtain a good loans at a very competitive rate from various educational, those banks and other institutions. And we ensure that the students get good placement and they are able to repay that loan, and they are able to be good citizens and good corporate managers, if I may say.
Correct. So in a way, you're making sure as a university that the students will get a good ROI after 1 or 2 years.
Absolutely. That is the point. So the student, if he gets a good or she gets a good ROI, as you rightly said, they will be ready to take the risk of taking a loan. More important, the banks will be ready to take the risk of giving them money.
Correct. Right. One more thing, any insights on how university and colleges could be more welcoming to students of different backgrounds and ethnicities? Like we have seen in Indian colleges, let's say people from Punjab, they will prefer Punjab colleges. People from South, they'll prefer to stay mostly in South. So that does not create a diverse pool. Whereas if we see international universities, they emphasize a lot on diversity, ethnicity, different industrial backgrounds as well. So how can we, as an ecosystem, as a country, can work towards creating a pool which is diverse and which will give us better results in the future?
Right, a very valid point. So currently what happens, there are a lot of quotas, which are local quotas, which are there. And more than that, it is the convenience of the students. So if I am in Punjab, if I study in a Punjab university, Then I don't have to move around. I have the same type of people. I have my comfort zone, which is there.
Correct.
So the first thing is, of course, the universities will what they need to have is a common central exams, entrance exams, where everyone has an equal opportunity with minimum quota that may be there. But and one good thing which is happening is the e-learning, right? The e-learning is enabled. Like for example, today, a man in a village in Uttarakhand or maybe somewhere in you take any remote place can do a course from Harvard University.
Correct.
Right? He or she can do a course from Harvard University and learn almost the same things which a student from USA is doing it in a class sitting in the Harvard. Right? So what happens is that the colleges are able to get students from remote locations, from various other places which otherwise was not possible in earlier time. So that question that you are saying, I'm confident that as the e-learning component gets on to be higher and higher in a curriculum of a student, then more and more diversity will come in, and by diversity I mean geographical diversity, I mean educational background diversity, and everything will come in for sure. And the best way, of course, is for these universities. What I feel that we should limit the quota to the minimum and have a central set of exams for which anyone can attend, and the the medium of education should be such that the maximum people are comfortable with.
All right. So in a way, e-learning will drive this thing more and more because there will be less constraints, less obstacles.
Correct.
Right.
Absolutely. That's how it is.
Moving on to the next question, the education sector is among the hardest hit by the pandemic. So all of us are expecting a huge drop in the placement percentage as well. How is the university dealing with that? What are the strategies? What are the plans for the next 1 or 2 years? How are you coping up with the situation? Especially as far as the placements are concerned.
Actually, surprisingly, you will find that just some time back, one of the IIMs, I think, has had their placements. And the placements have went up quite well. See, whatever one may say, the pandemic is over. I mean, not over, but the peak is over, if I may say, in the country. And I hope it is so, that we do not have a return. But I do take it that the peak is over because people have got used to it and they have learned how to work in difficult circumstances. So the factories will run, services will be provided. And if that is the case, you need to hire people for various things, right? And these people are who are these people? These are our students who have to go. So I can tell for all, since you are College Dunia and you are you have a large number of students who are moving from class 12th to colleges and beyond. I can tell them that there is really nothing much to be worried about. This was an hiccup which was there. And this hiccup will be over, and I'm confident that you will get back to getting good opportunities, good people. And that is what our philosophy is also, and that is continue to engage companies across India and abroad, and continue to bring to them that our students are as competitive as they were before the COVID.
Got it. Understood, sir. Right. So moving on to the next question, what I feel is that there is a huge gap between students and teachers, especially in colleges. I myself have experienced that.
Correct.
How do you personally try to bridge that gap and try to be more accessible and transparent with the students, have face-to-face conversations? What's your ideology and how do you approach that?
Right. So obviously, again, the Indian education policy, I keep falling back to that, says that the ideal student-teacher combination is 30:1. That is one teacher for 30 students. Okay. So that is an ideal situation. And as far as so, how do we get to that, right? And that can happen by having more number of such colleges. Today, if you see, India has 993 universities and about 39,931 colleges in our country. So there has been, if you see the CAGR, it is 8.93%. That is the number of the increase that you're talking about, which is healthy. But it should, you have to also consider the percentage increase in the students who are coming in this bracket, the increase in the students, which somehow the number of the percentage of students who are coming in is higher than the increase in the number of universities. So this trend has to be reversed. We have to have more number of such colleges at such levels that students are able to attend them and are comfortable studying them. And I'm confident that what will happen is the student to teacher ratio will come down. And also, we need to motivate people to get into the teaching business. So we need more number of teachers. We need teachers who are more qualified. We should have more doctorate students coming in who can then become teachers and in universities and other such establishments. So again, it is a full cycle. So if you motivate students to come into the education field, which, let me tell you, Indian education field is today, they say is going to be 101 billion US dollars. I mean, that is, I can't even think of the Indian version of that, how many crores that is going to be. So, and the private universities today have started paying more, somewhat more, to good faculty. So the students should desire, I mean, there should be a desire in the students to get into the education field, do a PhD, and then teach in universities and colleges. The moment the number of such faculty increases, what happens is the ratio obviously comes down. So combined, and obviously you see what happens. The universities and colleges, number of them can only increase if there are more faculty. If the faculty are not there, what will the universities? So it is how you got the idea what I'm saying.
I understood your point. Yes. So maintaining that healthy ratio, and I think I didn't get that point where you were highlighting that the growth of demographics should match or should be less than the growth of universities.
Yeah, I mean I would say the university's growth should be matching the growth of the number of
demographic
in the
I fall in that bracket. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Got it. So moving on to the last question, if you were to counsel any student, what would be your advice, any suggestions for our students on how to go ahead with the decision-making process of selecting a college or stream? Because there's a lot of confusion, dilemma going on around at that time, which stream to select, which college to go to. So what will be your mantra to them?
Right. My mantra, simple. Do what your heart desires. Do not be carried away by what your peers and your superior and your families are suggesting to you. That there was a time when there were only 3 professions, right? बेटा या तो तुम डॉक्टर बनोगे, या इंजीनियर बनोगे, या फौज में जाओगे.
करेक्ट,
राइट. इन 3 के अलावा और कुछ नहीं होता था कि मेरा बेटा तो इंजीनियर है या मेरा बेटा डॉक्टर है. Today there is an explosion in the type of jobs or the profiles that you can go for. There is an explosion in the number. And so what happens? Every one of us, see, the ideal thing they say is in life is that if you can have the profession which is also your hobby, right? That there can be a no better state for every one of us, because then that passion and all those factors come in. So how do you get that? So you should at an early stage start seeing as to what, as a student, what is that you are liking. Not everyone likes maths. Not everyone likes biology. There are some people who excel in maths. There are some who excel in biology. There are some who excel in public relations. There are some who excel in conversation. There are some who excel in sports. So a person, it is about not putting a round peg in a square hole, right? So my mantra to people is that as early as possible, learn what is your interest and get into do not be too bothered about a degree versus a diploma. You see, what happens is we are too worried about getting a degree. Right. That in the future is not going to work. So even if there is a diploma today, you excel in something that you are passionate about. Do not try to excel in something where you have no interest just because you are getting a degree. So in the future, I am confident that apprenticeship is going to be a big part of your learning in the higher ed. So keep that in mind.
Correct. So basically developing skills rather than just focusing on placements and things like that. So one of the things that you said was do what your heart says, but that's, I think, very difficult to decide, because at that point you're fed with so much of information from so many people. You are not able to decide what to pursue.
Yeah. So sorry to interrupt, but this is where organizations like yours come in. Mm-hmm. Okay, to help a student decide what they want to do based on facts and figures.
Correct.
And so you should be able to provide, you and there are similar other, like my next exam is one very nice upcoming such website. You have College Dunia, you have other some others. There are so many Shiksha and so on. There are a large number of such, and there is a huge market. So the point is, you should be able to guide the students using good digital tools and fact-based tools, and doing analysis of what this student is. If you do there are now diagnostic tools that are available, by which you can come to know what a student's inclination is, right, or what a propensity is there. So you can use that.
Yes.
That's the point.
So there is area of interest lies.
Correct.
Right, sir. So that's pretty much. It was very nice talking to you. Thank you for taking out the time.
Sure. And it is always a pleasure if we can guide our youth. Yes. They are the leaders of the future, and they are the ones who are going to take the country to its place.
Yes, I'm sure. Thank you for
always.
Yes.
Thank you. My pleasure.